The first thing you feel is weight pressing against your chest, as if the air itself has thickened into syrup. Your eyelids peel open, heavy and reluctant, revealing a blinding whiteness overhead. It's not the warm light of the sun. No, this is cold, artificial, humming faintly with the steady pulse of machinery. You try to lift your head, but something tugs at your arm. A tube connected to a machine quietly hissing beside the bed. A sharp chemical smell fills your nostrils. Antiseptic, sterile, lifeless. You blink again, your vision slowly sharpening, and notice the strange shapes in the room. Smooth walls with no seams, rounded corners, no windows. The kind of place designed to keep something in or out. You turn your head and your breath catches. There are 2 other beds here, identical to yours. But the figures in them are still, perfectly still. Their skin is pale, almost waxy. There's no rise or fall of their chests. The steady hum of your own medical monitors is the only sound in the room. A tremor of dread snakes down your spine. You try to remember how you got here, where here even is. But your mind is a fog, thick and impenetrable. Fragments float by. A flash of blue sky, a long corridor, the smell of metal. Voices speaking in a language you can't quite pin down. You reach for them, but they dissolve before you can grasp them. There's a faint vibration beneath you, subtle yet constant, like the purr of some enormous machine. You realize the weight pressing against your chest isn't just weakness. It's gravity. Artificial gravity, which means you're not on Earth. Your pulse quickens. A prickling sensation spreads across your skin, the kind that comes with the awareness that you are impossibly far from home. You swing your legs off the bed, muscles shaky and uncooperative, and the floor greets your bare feet with a cold, metallic touch. Your eyes dart to the others. A woman with close-cropped hair. A man whose features you can't quite place. You don't know their names, but the silence around them is absolute. The air feels heavier with each second you look at them. You know instinctively they're not going to wake up. Your own breath becomes the loudest thing in the room. It echoes in your ears, quick and shallow. You search for something, anything, that might explain this. That's when you notice the small panel near the far wall, its surface glowing faintly. You shuffle toward it, each step clumsy until you're close enough to read the neat utilitarian letters. Hail Mary, science vessel. The words mean nothing at first. And then, like a spark in the darkness, a fragment of memory flares. A launch pad, a sky splitting open with fire, a voice crackling through a headset, the phrase, "Hi." Desperate, last hope, you're sane. Before you can dig deeper, a sudden whisper of motion draws your attention. The lights overhead dim slightly, and you feel the faintest shift in the vibration under your feet. Somewhere beyond these walls, something massive is changing direction. You can almost sense the immensity of it. You're adrift in the silence, a single human heartbeat your throat is dry, but you force out a sound. The first word no one answers. Somewhere deep in your gut, you know the truth. Whatever this mission was, it's still going, and you are the only one left to see it through. If you find this summary helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Novel Whisper Official, and comment below the title of the novel you'd like us to summarize next. We'll make it happen soon. The air feels colder now. You take a breath, steady yourself, and look again at the dead faces of your crewmates. You don't remember their names, but you do remember this. You're alone. And out here, alone means you either find the answer or die with the question. You stand very still and listen to the ship breathe. There's a rhythm to it now that your panic has ebbed. A layered soundscape of faint fans, a pulse of coolant, the sigh of air recirculating through hidden lungs. You reach for that rhythm like a rope over dark water and let it steady your hands. The panel that said Hail Mary waits for you, blank-faced and patient, as if it has all the time in the universe. Maybe it does. You're the one running out. A soft chime breaks the white quiet. The bed you woke on retracts its restraints with a gentle click. On the display, a thin line of text appears in neat block letters. Vitals stable. Dispensing hydration. A compartment slides open, offering a sealed pouch of water and a straw. You puncture it, drink greedily, and the cold runs through you like rain after a drought. With the water comes clarity, not enough to remember a life, but enough to notice what's missing from it. On the other beds, the machines do nothing. You find a locker bay along the wall, 6 compartments, 2 open and empty, 4 sealed with no external handles. The 2 open ones hold standard things: sterile clothing, a toolkit folded into gray fabric, a packet of nutrient bars with cheerful colors that try too hard. When you change into the soft ship suit, you notice your hands. Clean, nails trimmed, a faint rawness at the crooks of your elbows. Whoever cared for you wanted you operational, not comfortable. Another chime. The panel lights. Systems nominal. Radiation shielding active. Course hold. The words land without meaning, then lodge somewhere behind your eyes like seeds. Course. Hold. You swallow. A ship on a held course suggests there was once a path to hold, a destination, a point to aim a life at. You want to ask the room for everything at once and get angry when you can't choose where to start. Tell me on where I am, you say, your voice still hoarse. No answer. The panel remains impassive. You try again. Computer, ship, anyone? A single dot blinks on the display. Listening. Where am I, you repeat. The dot flickers, then, units? Units? You echo, confused, then realize it wants a language of measurement. Kilometers, miles, light years? You're guessing in the dark, throwing stones toward a shape you can't see. A slow response. Measurement protocols available, navigation data secured, authorization required. There's a word in there that makes your stomach tighten. Secured. The ship knows where it is. It just doesn't know if it should tell you. Which implies there was once an agreement about who you are. Who am I, you ask? Have to test the system, have to test yourself. The panel hesitates. Then, crew member. Data partially redacted by medical protocol. Identity. A thin line crawls across as if the ship is riffling through drawers inside your skull. Rye. The line freezes. The word is almost there. Your breath catches on the edge of it. Then the screen clears itself with clinical politeness, as if embarrassed by its own vulnerability. Identification. Incomplete. But the sound is already echoing in your head, a shape your mouth recognizes before your mind can justify it. Rye. You try it on. Ryland. The name feels like a key that fits the lock. Ryland Grace. The syllables fall into place with a click you feel down in your bones. For a moment, you're not in the sterile bay. You're somewhere else. Bright sun on a parking lot, a coffee cup cooling on your car roof, a stack of papers under your arm. The faint thrill of an argument you haven't had yet. A classroom? A lab? The memory snaps like a weak wire and you're back in the white room with dead crewmates and a patient machine. Ryland Grace, you tell the ship as if announcing yourself to a bouncer who suspects a fake ID. Match probability, 0.61, the panel replies. Then, as if deciding to be kind, accepted for non-critical operations. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. Non-critical is a small mercy, but it's a door opening. Can you show me a map, a window, anything? You ask. Displaying sky, the ship says. And the lights dim. The far wall becomes a low-resolution field of stars. It takes your brain a second to understand that the wall isn't a window at all, but a feed from an outside camera. The image jitters and then stabilizes, a glitter-scattered black so deep it makes your pulse stutter. There's no comforting curve of a blue planet anywhere, no halo of a station ring, just the raw sear of starlight. You don't know your constellations well enough to cry out what's missing, but you know absence when you feel it. The pattern is wrong. It's like listening to your favorite song and discovering that someone has shifted every note a hair off key. Familiar and not. You reach your fingers toward the star field and realize your hand is trembling. Another view, you whisper. The feed rotates. A distant coin of light swells and brightens. A star clean as a knife edge, haloed with glare. Your mouth goes dry. The sun has a familiar warmth, a color that belongs to home. This one is slightly different, a shade bluer, sharper. Not your sun, not the one that rises over oceans and fields in the slow sleepwalk of human cities. You are not in your neighborhood anymore. The ship senses your breathing spike and, like a hospital nurse, returns the main lights to their previous setting. The wall is just a wall again. You sway a little. Your world shrinks back to a room. It's almost a relief. You think there was a plan. You think plans have steps. You think, if I can find step 1, step 2 might remember me. There are small tasks you can do without permission. You make the room yours in practical ways. You check the toolkit, inventory what's in it. You test the nutrient bars, chalky, tolerable. You pull the dead crew's sheets up to cover their faces. You whisper an apology you're not sure is yours to give. The act of covering them changes the air like closing a door in winter. You are not their doctor, priest, or friend, but you're the only witness left. That has to count for something. When you finally work up the nerve to ask the question that's been pacing your skull since you read the ship's name, Hail Mary, you do it indirectly, like sneaking up on an animal in the brush. Emission summary, you say carefully. Non-critical, general overview. The dot blinks. Then, to your surprise, the wall comes alive with diagrams. A stylized star, a planet, a spidery outline of the ship. Arrows, fuel reserves, heat rejection. Beside it, a line of text. Interstellar mission, investigative remediation. Objective, identify cause of solar output decline, identify remedy, return feasibility low. The last 3 words are a fist around your heart. Return feasibility low. There's a way to say no way back that doesn't sound like a death sentence, and the ship has chosen it. Your body answers before your mind does. Knees softening, jaw tightening, a throb in your temples. The fragment of a launch pad returns with brutal clarity. The roar of engines you could feel in your teeth. The smell of hot metal and sealant. A woman's voice, calm and flinty, telling you that this isn't heroism, it's math. You arguing, you always argue, that you're a teacher, a researcher, you don't do suicide runs. The memory flickers, brightens, and breaks apart. You grope after the name attached to the voice. It slips through your fingers like a fish. The machine offers more, as if to fill the silence you're making. Threat assessment. Global extinction event probability, high. Coordination, international. Launch authority, consortium. Crew, 3. Contingency, auto-revival upon arrival. Auto-revival. So the ship put you to sleep and woke you when you got wherever this is. You glance at the covered shapes on the other beds. 3 intended, 1 awake. Something went wrong in the space between the intention and the arrival. You don't know how long that space is. You don't know what it did to you. You ask for a clock because people need clocks. The ship provides one in the blandest possible way. Mission elapsed time. The number is so large it means nothing at first. A riot of digits that don't belong on a wristwatch. You break it down the way you taught students to break down problems. Seconds to minutes, minutes to hours, hours to days. Then you stop. You can feel the answer like a weight before you perform the rest of the math. Years. A lot of them. More than a human bone should ever carry. Your reflection in the polished metal of a cabinet surprises you. You look younger than the number implies. Sleep cheats time. You're grateful for the cheat and sickened by it at once. What was the plan for me? You ask the ship because you're tired of hearing your own thoughts echo in your skull. Medical protocol. Restore function. Cognitive impairment expected. Transient. Role, lead scientist. Specialty, biochemistry, astrobiology. That last word lands with a thud that shakes loose a clutch of images, Petri dishes glowing faint green under lab lights. A graph with a wickedly curved line labeled in a shorthand you recognize but don't yet understand. A lecture hall. Students scribbling. Professor Grace, someone says, and your mouth remembers how to smile without quite knowing why. So the ship says you're a scientist. Your hands say you're a caretaker. Your knees say you've been lying down for a very long time. And the stars say you're very far from home. The pieces begin to drift toward one another, shy magnets testing their attraction. What is causing the solar output decline? You ask, and the ship denies you politely. Data classified. Authorization required. Not unknown. Just locked behind a door you or your crewmates must have decided to close for good reason. Maybe to keep an unready mind from making panicked choices. Maybe because there are some truths you should ease into or they will crush your sternum. You let the wall go dark and lie back on the bed you woke on, not because you're tired, though you are, but because the mattress remembers your shape and for a moment you want to be remembered by something. Your name, your hands, the faint ghost of chalk dust. These are anchors and you tie them around your waist and lean over the rail. In the darkness behind your eyes, a voice with the precision of a metronome is explaining something about fuel mass ratios. Another voice higher laughs and says, "You're such a nerd, Ryland." Warmth blooms in your chest, gone before you can see the face attached to it. Return feasibility low. If you were the kind of person who ran from hard things, you wouldn't be here. You don't remember deciding that, but you can feel the shape of the decision in your bones the way sailors feel weather and scars. You sit up again because lying down is not what a lead scientist does when the stars are wrong. The ship's breath mingles with yours. The covered shapes are silent. The dot on the panel waits. Okay, you say to the room, to the ship, to the future that's walking toward you. If I can't go home yet, then I do the job. You don't know the job's full name. You don't know how many steps it will take or how many pieces of yourself you'll have to trade for each one. But you know the first step because it is always the same. Learn enough to ask a better question. You square your shoulders, feel the thin fabric pull across your back and begin. You ask the ship for anything it will give you that isn't locked behind authorization. And what it offers is light. Thin, clinical. Documentary light spilling across the wall, a graph descending with the arrogant smoothness of math. Solar output over time. The line slopes down like a promise broken in slow motion. The numbers don't scream. They don't have to. A 2% dip here, a projected 10% there. A shaded cone widening outward into the future where crops fail, oceans seize, and the sky itself learns to bite. The sight of that line jostles something loose. You aren't in the med bay anymore. You're in a conference room that looks like all conference rooms. Bad carpet, worse coffee, a screen too bright for human eyes at 9 in the morning. A woman stands at the end of the table, not tall but taller than everyone because authority adds inches. Her hair is severe, her tone sharper. You don't know her name yet, but you feel the way the room bends around her. Gravity with a human face. On the screen behind her. Not a graph now, but a photograph from space. The sun blazing, Venus a pale jewel, and between them a faint, impossible filament visible only in infrared. A line that shouldn't exist. The caption in some clipped agency font. Petrova line, 1.42 unbanned. You remember the story tripping through the world like a rumor that refused to die. An astronomer with a small grant and larger stubbornness noticed a spectral anomaly, a tidy emission at 142 micrometers that got brighter when you looked along a very specific path, from Sun to Venus and back again. Not dust, not instrument error, not cosmic rays being cute. Something was drinking starlight and, like all living things, exhaling waste. A breath made of infrared. You blink in the memory and the picture is gone, replaced by another. A thermal image of Venus with a hot scar swaddling the equator like a belt that has been pulled one notch too tight. The belt matches the line. You don't need the presenter to say the quiet part out loud. You hear it anyway. There's a pipeline between Sun and Venus, a highway of something that eats energy and uses the planet like a nursery. You hear the name for the first time, and even now in the ship's sick light you feel how it made the room colder. Astrophage. Star Eater. Scientific language loves to be neutral. Sometimes it fails. The word carries dread like a toxin bound to protein. In the memory, people around the table take polite turns being skeptical. They talk about non-biological mechanisms and plasmonic instabilities. You talk too. You always talk. Your voice steady because argument has been the air you breathe since chalk dust lived under your fingernails. You say that life is chemistry and opportunity. Feed anything enough energy and give it a place to put its children, and it will bloom. The woman at the end of the table doesn't nod. She doesn't need to. She's not here for your comfort. She's here for the math. The slide deck marches on like a funeral procession. Radiative transfer models, feedback loops, projections of average global temperature crashing over decades, not centuries. The word extinction appears once, small and precise, as if saying it quietly makes it less rude. Governments convene. Supply chains lurch. Orbital telescopes you've only read about swing their cold eyes toward a smear of infrared between a star and its second planet. And every time you double-check the analysis, the result is uglier than the rumor. Your next memory is not a room. It's a lab that smells like hot plastic and old coffee. Your smell, your life. You hold a tube up to the light like a priest lifting a wafer. Inside, nothing visible, which is the kind of nothing that keeps scientists up at night. You're not alone. A grad student. Your grad student? A colleague? Points at the incubator readout where a number creeps upward too quickly for comfort. Heat. The tube is making heat. Not a lot. Enough to be wrong. You feed the nothing in the tube a diet you would never give a nothing. Light in a band it shouldn't prefer. A trickle of gas that makes Venus Venus. The nothing acts like a thing. It divides. It changes mass in ways that make calorimetry cry. It stores energy in a way that breaks your intuition and then releases it in the same smug 1.42 micron psi you saw in the sky. You hate it instantly. You love it more. It's a vandal writing graffiti on thermodynamics, but the letters are crisp and elegant. The lab memory jump cuts. You are arguing in a hallway, carrying printouts like shields. Someone tells you that what you're seeing must be contamination, must be artifact, must be your desire to be right wearing a lab coat. You shoot back too fast. That desire doesn't emit at a fixed wavelength. The woman with the gravity for a voice appears at the end of the hall. People straighten as if an exam just began. "Prove it lives," she says, and you hear yourself answer, "I already am." You ask the ship for audio from this part of your life, and it gives you a ghost, a recording of your own voice dictating lab notes. Subject displays motility at photon flux above threshold. Trajectory aligns with laser source. Metabolic signature inferred from waste emission. You don't remember saying the words, but your tongue knows how they feel. You call the thing in your tube astrophage once, like a private joke you hope doesn't stick. It does. The world is hungry for names. Panic ripples in layers. Grocery shelves empty not because anyone knows why they're scared, but because fear makes hands heavy. Then knowledge catches up with instinct. and the heavy hands build rockets instead. Nations that cannot agree on how to define morning agree to share fuel formulas and star trackers. Engineers wake up under their desks with equations printed backwards on their faces. You visit facilities larger than cities where machines build smaller machines that will climb into a sky going dim. And always the same problem sneers from the whiteboard: energy. Moving a thing between stars takes a violence you can't pack into chemical bonds, and nuclear options pay out too slowly. Astrophage, meanwhile, makes a mockery of the ledger. It gulps light, buries the gluttony in a mass change trick that would have been fantasy last year, and then turns that horde into acceleration with obscene efficiency, spitting the same 1.42 micron lullaby behind it as it flees. Sun to Venus to sun, a loop of appetite. You don't know whether to call it an animal, a plant, or a sin. You settle for fuel. In one remembered meeting, a white-haired man with a pilot's calm says, "You want me to fly the thing powered by the thing that ate our sky." He's not joking. No one laughs. You scribble containment and underline it twice. The woman with the iron voice, when you can almost scrape her name off the inside of your teeth now, nods once, already in the future where your scruples were traded for Delta V. Petrova lines bloom across other stars as observatories get greedy. Not all suns dim. Some hold steady like defiant candles in rain. Why? That word colonizes entire departments. You're good at that word. It's your favorite and your curse. You draw a matrix on a board. Stars with lines that dim versus stars with lines that don't. Composition, age, neighbors. You circle a candidate with a marker that squeaks from running out of ink. You stab the cap back on like it insulted you and say, "Tau Ceti." Every step you take toward that star in memory drags you a step through the air of the medbay now. You watch yourself volunteer and then insist you didn't. You watch authority inform you that volunteering is contagious and you've just infected yourself. You fight because it's habit and because sometimes habit is dignity. You lose because math does not negotiate. The project needs a biochemist who understands the vandal in the tube and can coax it to behave like a propellant instead of a plague. It needs a teacher who can translate terror into procedure. It needs a human who will do the job after the last excuse has been stripped away. You rub your forearm where a phantom needle stings. In a memory that smells like hospitals and dawn, you sign something that adds your body to a machine. Beside your signature, 2 other names: bright, competent, mortal. You almost see their faces, your mind flinches, and the picture jumps. Back in the ship, the wall shows you one last slide. It's not a graph. It's a photograph taken from the ground. Sunset over water. The sun is lower than it should be, redder than memory allows, its light thrown like thin blood over the wave crease horizon. The caption is a date. You do the subtraction instinctively, years ago. The day the sky broke into news. You stand there, a person made of leaked facts and half-healed choices, and feel the shape of the task wrap around you like a harness. The thing that eats stars is not malicious. It is just alive. Being alive is sometimes indistinguishable from being cruel. Your job is to convince one universe's cruelty to buy another universe's time. Ship, you say, because talking makes the room feel less like a coffin. Show me everything you can about astrophage that isn't classified. The dot blinks. A list appears. Emission spectra, containment guidelines, fuel control schematics stripped of the parts you most want. Enough to begin. Never enough to rest. That feels right. That feels like how this has always been. You set your hand on the console. It's warm because it's awake, because you are. You think about the filament between Sun and Venus, a highway of hunger, and the colder, cleaner line between you and the star that is not your own. You don't need to remember every name to know the direction. Okay, You whisper to the dark. Let's go find out why Tau Ceti keeps its candle lit. They come for you in the kind of morning that pretends to be harmless. A strip of pale sun on your kitchen counter, a kettle beginning to mutter, a teacher's bag leaned against the chair with graded quizzes like small, obedient birds inside. A knock at the door becomes a decision. Two people in suits stand there, out of breath with urgency they try not to show. And the woman from the conference room steps out of your memory and onto your welcome mat as if she has every right to be in both places at once. Dr. Grace, she says, and the title is an order, not a courtesy. We're leaving. You laugh because habit makes brave noises. I have class in 40 minutes. Your students will have other teachers, she says. Your planet might not have other yous. A black car. A longer day than any you've taught. Somewhere between the highway and the airfield, she gives you a name to attach to her gravity. Eva Strat. No department, no country, just authority grown like coral around crisis. She speaks in clauses that all end with the same punctuation. We cannot afford alternatives. The world outside your window is already tilting. Billboards carry heat maps instead of soda. News anchors learn new words with the solemnity of baptism. Albedo, irradiance, crop failure. Cities that race each other for skyline height begin to look smaller. People buy candles not because candles are romantic, but because power grids don't like surprises and the sky has become one. Across borders, a quiet, terrified cooperation blooms. The kind you only see when a house fire makes enemies carry furniture together. You land in places built to be secret and discover secrecy has been replaced by scale. Vast hangars glow with a midnight sun of arc lamps. Rows of tanks squat like sleeping whales, silvered and hulking, each one labeled with numbers that are really prayers. Engineers move with the fast, clipped steps of people who have replaced sleep with procedure. Posters line corridors, not with slogans, but with checklists. Your badge opens doors that weren't supposed to exist last year. They walk you through it as if you're a new organ being transplanted into a body that's already mid-surgery. The plan they call a plan because calling it a miracle would make it sound unreliable. Build a ship that can sip starvation and sprint between stars on the very thing that's killing you. Feed it astrophage. Teach the vandal to push. You tell Strat the words your mouth thinks will save you. I'm a researcher, not a pilot. She nods as if you've confirmed a useful data point. Good. We have pilots. We don't have another you for when fuel becomes a pathogen at the wrong moment. You will keep it a fuel. She says it like a blessing that's also a curse. Later, alone in a borrowed office that smells like ethanol and printer toner, you stare at your reflection in the window and practice hating her less than you hate being necessary. Training begins, not with grand gestures, but with exercises that look boring until they hurt. A centrifuge makes a cathedral out of a metal arm, whirling until your vision tightens into a straw and your heartbeat sounds like someone kicking a door. The doctors on the other side of the glass smile with the politeness of waiters and jot numbers. In a neutral little room, a psychologist slides ink blots across a table and listens to the weather of your voice. In a pool the size of a lake, you crawl inside a mock-up and learn that a suit becomes a prison if you panic. Panic is a choice you must forget how to make. Your new classmates wear their competence like armor. Commander Yao, courteous and unreadable, moves with the precision of someone who has rehearsed heroism until it's just another task. Ilyukina, laughing like a cracked bell, swears friendship and insults you in the same breath until you realize it's how she says welcome. They both come from places that learn gravity early and suspicion later. You come from classrooms and labs where the floor is polite and the oxygen is free. You listen more than you talk. You tell jokes at the wrong times because silence makes you think of vacuum. At night, when the lights dim to a tired bruise and the corridors empty out, you go back to the little room no one else wants, the one with the fume hood and the incubator and a set of cameras that only look inward. You coax astrophage to behave in boxes, to confine its breath to valves, to admit that pressure and temperature are not suggestions. You invent swear words for the moments it reminds you it is life, not equipment. You invent praises for the minutes it acts like a propellant. Somewhere between insults and encouragements, you begin to admire it the way sailors admire storms, as a thing that takes respect personally. Strat visits unpredictably, the way weather rolls in over plains. She appears beside a tank one afternoon while you and a chemical engineer argue over heat exchangers that would rather be radiators. "Show me failure," she says by way of greeting. You do. She smiles, a small, cold sunrise. "Good. I can fund failure. I cannot fund ignorance." She signs a paper that moves 3 factories from making cars to making shipskin. Later, when you accuse her of going too far, she says, "The ocean is rising into the living room, Dr. Grace. We will apologize to the furniture after." On screens, the Petrova line thickens like the plot of a story you don't want to be in. In footage from orbit, Venus glows as if wearing a fever. On other screens, the Tau Ceti system turns from a name in a textbook into a target painted in concentric rings of data. Models explain with the bright confidence of liars and the humble faltering of prophets why that star seems to hold steady while others flicker. Somewhere in those circles an answer lives. You draw a circle around the circle and write, "Go there." 100,000 people who will never know your face begin to arrange their days around that line. You keep trying to decline. It becomes a ritual, almost polite. "I'm not astronaut material," you tell Strat after a week that turns your bones to wet rope. "Correct," she says. "You are mission material. Astronaut is a uniform, mission is a species." You say, "I didn't sign up." She says, "You signed a paper. The rest of us didn't even get pens." She is infuriating and correct and never tired, and sometimes you wonder what she sells to her own reflection to buy so much certainty. The first time you see the Hail Mary's skeleton, it takes the air out of you. On an assembly stage the size of a myth, ribs of truss rise in a shining lattice that looks like someone has caught a whale out of numbers and welded it to the sky. Tanks slot in like vertebrae. A control module blushes with wiring. The crew compartment is small enough to memorize in a glance, which is good because you will live there long enough to forget other rooms ever existed. A glass wall separates you from it for now. Your hand finds the glass without consulting you. You whisper, "That's too small for humanity's hope." Strat hears you and says, "No. It's exactly the right size for yours. There are ridiculous, specific tasks that eat days." You learn to thread yourself into a sleeper couch that will keep your bones from remembering Earth during deceleration. You practice medical procedures on fake skin until your hands stop shaking at the thought of needing them on real skin. You memorize checklists until your dreams begin with Step 1. You fail a docking exercise in the simulator and sit in the dim mock-up afterward until Ilyukina climbs in and kicks your boot and says, "Again? You only get to quit if the sun forgives us." Between drills, the world sends you letters with its weather on them. A village in a dry country writes to say the midday harvest bells ring at 10 now because noon is a rumor. A town where snow should be a friend reports a winter that arrived like a debt collector. There are photographs of stadiums converted into algae farms, great bowls of green that look like planets. In one image, a child holds a candle at the noon meal because the grid failed again and the generators are rationed for hospitals. You read each message once. You read one twice. A classroom of kids holding a banner that says, "Good luck, Dr. Grace," in hand-painted letters that blush in awkward places. You hang it in the lab where astrophage refuses to be impressed. You begin to understand that the training is not to make you ready. Readiness is a myth told by pamphlets to new recruits. The training is to strip away the ways you hide from fear until nothing sits between you and the job but breath. The centrifuge cannot make your heart stronger. It can teach your mind not to abandon your heart when the dial climbs. The simulator cannot promise safe docking. It can teach you to hear your own panic and say, "Not now." On a night that has forgotten it's a night, you stand on a catwalk while technicians below hustle a shining cylinder toward the ship's belly. Strat appears at your elbow like a punctuation mark. "Tomorrow," she says. "A full-stack test. Engines live. Then we greenlight the coma protocol trial." The word coma sits between you like a third person. You've spoken around it for months. Now it sets down its luggage and asks for a bed. "You know I didn't agree to fly," you say. A last ember of protest you keep alive because it feels like a piece of you that hasn't been requisitioned. Strat doesn't sigh. She never wastes oxygen. "I know you agreed to solve problems no one else can solve as fast as you can solve them," she says. "Today that's in a lab. Tomorrow it might be in a ship. On the day after, I don't care where it is as long as it is." You look down at the crew capsule, compact and hungry for occupants. You imagine Yao's calm and Ilyukina's grin filling it until it feels bigger. You imagine your own hands buckled into the couch, your own breath fogging the inside of a helmet the way fear fogs a mind. You think about your students, about chalk dust, about how the entire planet has become a student looking at you for an answer you do not have yet. You think about the sun, tired and thinning, and how stars have no patience for your biography. "Okay," you say, and the word is not surrender. It's a tool picked up from a bench. You tuck it into your belt. Tomorrow comes with or without your permission. Best to meet it carrying something. The stars are wrong. You know it the way you know your own heartbeat. By feel, not by sight. The view on the ship's wall display is a frozen postcard of deep space, and though you can't yet read the constellations the way astronomers can, something inside you keeps saying, "This is not home." The feed rotates slowly and a pale coin swells at the edge of the frame. A star, sharper and bluer than the sun you left behind, burns with a steady, merciless light. It hangs in the black like an unblinking eye. You don't need the ship to confirm it, but it does anyway. Tau Ceti system, arrival complete. The words hit you with two equal and opposite forces. Awe and fear. Awe because you're here. 40 trillion kilometers from Earth, riding in a metal shell propelled by something the size of a bacterium. Fear because arrival means the clock just got louder. The Hail Mary hasn't carried you all this way to sightsee. There's a job waiting, and the job starts now. You ask the ship for a scan of the system. The wall blooms with a map, a central star, 5 planets plotted in clean arcs, and one thick red marker on the third orbit from the sun, Iridi. The name means nothing to you yet, but the ship tags it as priority. The models you remember from training come back in fragments. Tau Ceti's own Petrova line, energy stolen from its star by the same organism killing Earth's. You were sent to find why Tau Ceti hasn't dimmed into disaster. Somewhere in this system is the answer. Or another dead end. You zoom in on Arid and see something strange. A faint halo, barely visible even on enhanced display. The ship overlays data, atmospheric readings, energy signatures. The numbers are incomplete, but one detail sticks. Abundant carbon dioxide, high surface temperature, thick clouds. It's hot, alien, and very likely crawling with the thing you came to study. You're about to request a course plot when the proximity alarm shatters the stillness with a staccato chirp. A new shape emerges on the star map. A dot, moving fast, its trajectory bending toward you. You freeze. Out here, there are no air traffic patterns, no friendly transponders, no reason for company, unless the ship runs an automated scan, and the results scroll past like lines of an alien poem. Mass larger than Hail Mary. Hull irregular. No matching entry in any human database. Heat signature stable. Acceleration constant. Whatever it is, it's not debris. It's under control. You stare at the blip, throat dry. The ship offers a fact you didn't ask for. Impact probability, 0. Collision course not detected. Relative velocity high. Approach vector, direct. It's coming to you. Your mind runs ahead, tripping over possibilities. Another human ship? Impossible. A probe from some distant older mission? Unlikely. Which leaves the one option you'd filed away as science fiction even while training for an interstellar mission. Alien. The blip swells in the forward cameras, resolving into a silhouette. It's unlike anything you've seen in aerospace engineering. Asymmetrical, bristling with structures that look more like coral growth than welded truss. The surface glints, not metallic but mineral like polished stone under a wet sun. And it's close enough now that you see movement. Sections flexing and shifting as though the whole craft is breathing. You forget to breathe yourself. The ship's computer pings calmly. Range, 1,000 meters. Communication attempt, no protocol match. Visual transmission, received. Your display splits, half still showing the alien vessel, half filled with a feed of shifting shapes, pulses of light, and rhythmic flickers. It's not language as you know it, but it is language. Structured, deliberate, patient. You lean forward, hypnotized. Somewhere in the patterns you feel intention. Not random noise, not hostility, just presence. And then your ship answers for you, unprompted, with a simple broadcast. A loop of basic mathematical sequences. Prime numbers increasing in order. A gesture as old as the idea of first contact. The alien craft pauses, its light pattern stilling as if listening. Then it replies, prime numbers again, but in a different modulation, as if saying, yes, we understand. A laugh breaks out of you, unplanned and a little wild. You're not alone out here. The mission you thought was a solitary exile has just become a meeting place. The alien ship drifts closer until it matches your speed exactly, hanging beside the Hail Mary like a shadow that decided to walk alongside you instead of pass you by. It's only then you notice what's not there. No weapons ports, no signs of armor. Instead, the entire craft seems shaped around a single purpose. Survival. You step back from the console, pulse hammering as the ship displays a final line. Direct docking attempt, inbound. The docking bay. The place where another world might step into yours. You have no idea what you're about to see. Only that whatever happens next, you will remember it for the rest of your life. However long or short that might be. The airlock cycles with a sound you've only ever associated with humans. The hiss of atmosphere equalizing. The low groan of seals under strain. But the shapes and movements on the docking interface are all wrong. This is not a human-built mechanism. The alien craft doesn't so much connect to the Hail Mary as it adheres to it, clinging like two soap bubbles touching surface membranes flexing in slow, deliberate pulses. You stand in the vestibule, one hand hovering over the emergency seal control, the other clutching a tablet you're not sure is going to help. The display shows an interior scan of the alien's docking structure. It's not a tunnel. It's more like a pressurized organ, shifting subtly as if adjusting itself to meet your ship's doorway. The ship's sensors whisper, atmosphere compatibility, non-lethal for short exposure. Oxygen, trace, primary gases, ammonia, nitrogen, argon. Temperature 30 degrees. Your breath fogs inside your helmet as you seal it and engage the portable life support unit. A thought tries to plant itself. I am about to meet something from another star. But you shove it aside. You can't afford awe just yet. The inner hatch opens with a deep, resonant creak. And for the first time, you're looking directly into the space between two civilizations. The alien corridor is dim, lit by a diffuse glow that doesn't seem to come from fixtures but from the very walls themselves, mottled in patterns like polished volcanic rock. The air is hazy with something that dances in slow spirals. Not dust, but motes of condensed vapor, shimmering faintly in the light. And then movement. A shape emerges from the haze, low to the ground, broad, moving on multiple limbs that articulate with insect precision and mammalian weight. For an instant you think of a spider carved out of black stone, but as it approaches, more details resolve. A central body encased in a lattice of translucent armor, inner layers shifting with mechanical rhythm, limbs ending in complex jointed hands, an oval head studded with sensory nodes that glint like polished gemstones. The creature stops a meter away. You can see now that its movements aren't predatory or erratic. They're measured, cautious, almost polite. It raises one arm, folds its multi-jointed fingers in a repeating pattern. At first you think it's random, then you realize 3 motions, pause. 5 motions, pause. 7 motions, prime numbers again. You swallow, your throat dry inside the helmet. You lift your gloved hand and mirror the pattern. Slow, deliberate, exaggerating each movement so there's no chance of misinterpretation. The alien tilts its head slightly, a motion so human you feel your chest tighten. Then, without warning, it emits a sound, a low, resonant chord that vibrates through the air and into your bones. It's not a roar, not a growl, but something harmonic, as if made to carry through fluid or dense air. Your suit mic picks up the sound, and the ship's computer runs a frantic analysis projecting possible frequency patterns. Then, astonishingly, the alien repeats the chord, this time broken into shorter bursts. 3. Pause. 5. Pause. 7. A prime number handshake. You don't realize you're grinning until your face presses against the helmet padding. Okay, you murmur, your voice shaky with relief and adrenaline. We can work with this. The alien steps closer, slow enough for you to step back if you want to. You don't. Its sensory nodes track your movements with a precision that feels almost friendly. You notice something then. The faint glimmer of condensation forming on the inner surface of your helmet. It's warmer here than your suit likes, and the air smells faintly metallic like hot stone after rain. It stops just close enough for you to see details in the translucent armor. Internal structures like bundles of cables pulsing with a slow rhythm. You realize with a start that it's not purely mechanical. You're looking at something that's part biology, part engineered design. A deep tone reverberates again, shorter this time, followed by a sequence of clicks. The ship's computer spits out a translation attempt. Identity request. You point to your chest. Ryland, you say, speaking slowly, letting the syllables hang in the air. The alien tilts its head again, then produces a rapid series of clicks and resonant hums. The translation software hesitates, then prints a single word on your visor display. Rocky. You don't know if that's the alien's actual name or the closest your ship can render it in human phonetics, but in that moment, it doesn't matter. You extend your hand, palm open. Rocky hesitates, then extends one of his own multi-fingered limbs. The touch is light, deliberate, and warmer than you expect. The warmth of a living being, not cold metal. Something in your chest shifts. The mission, the years of training, the lonely awakening surrounded by silence. All of it suddenly has a second player. And not just any player. Someone who understands the stakes because their own star is dying. Their own world is fading. The air between you is heavy with possibility. You can almost feel the lines of history bending in real time. 2 civilizations meeting at the knife edge of survival. And for the first time since waking, you're not alone in the dark. You and Rocky face each other in the quiet pulse of the docking corridor. The air thick with heat and the faint metallic tang of his atmosphere. Neither of you moves for a long moment. 2 creatures from different suns, watching, weighing, trying to decide if this meeting is the start of a bargain or a war. Rocky is the first to break the stillness. He retracts his limb, then taps the floor with a quick, precise rhythm. 3, 5, 7, pause. You already know the language of prime numbers, but now you hear subtler variations. Each tap has a slightly different pitch, a resonance that must be coming from the structure of his body. He's not just tapping, he's shaping sound. You squat to bring yourself closer to his level and pull out your tablet, switching to a simple visual interface. You draw 3 dots, pause, 5 dots, pause, 7 dots. Rocky leans forward, his sensory nodes brightening slightly. Interest, maybe? He produces a low harmonic tone that your computer translates as yes, and just like that, you have a baseline, a confirmation response loop. You spend the next half hour trading shapes and sounds, numbers, geometric patterns, ratios. Rocky's speech is a blend of musical chords, percussive clicks, and ultrasonic bursts you only know about because your sensors catch them. Your own contributions are clumsy in comparison. You rely on visuals, gestures, and a handful of tones the Hail Marys speakers can generate. Progress is slow, but it's not frustrating. It's exhilarating. Each successful exchange is a small bridge built over a chasm you both need to cross. You teach him star with a simple glowing dot on your tablet, then planet with smaller circles orbiting. He teaches you his word for his homeworld, a harmonic phrase that rises like the beginning of a song. The translation software can't render it well, so you write it phonetically in your notes. At one point, Rocky taps his chest and produces a sound so deep you feel it in your ribs. Your display flashes. Irid. He repeats the sound, then projects a rough 3D image from a device on his limb. A rocky, clouded planet wrapped in a haze of heat. You recognize it instantly from your Tau Ceti scans. Arid is his home. You tap your chest in return. Earth, you say, showing him a blue-green sphere on your screen. Rocky tilts his head, sensory nodes shimmering faintly. He responds with a chord you don't recognize. The translation struggles, then gives you hot rocks, cool water, many living. You feel a strange pang. He's describing your planet not as a name, but as a place, a summary of its soul. You nod slowly. Yes, you say, and for the first time since waking up alone, the word feels like it has weight. The real breakthrough comes when you both discover a shared concept without trying. You're showing him orbital diagrams, your Sun, Earth, Venus, when Rocky interrupts with a sharp, urgent tone. He sketches his own system in glowing points of light, marking his star and Arid. And then a looping line between them, the Petrova line. You both lean closer, pointing at the line, then at each other's stars. Then making the same slow, downward gesture with your hands. Dimming. The meaning is crystal clear. My star is dying too. It hits you in the chest like a physical impact. This isn't just a first contact, it's a rescue mission. 2 rescues running in parallel. Your species and his are both standing on the same cliff, staring into the same dark. Rocky projects more images. Strange structures on his world. Swarming craft in orbit, what looks like mining activity in thick clouds. He points to the Petrova line again, then to a different point in space, and your display recognizes the coordinates. An object orbiting close to Arid's star, probably the source of whatever answer Rocky came here to find. You realize something else then. He's alone too. No crew visible on his ship, no extra voices or movements in the background. Just one representative risking everything because his people need answers. The session ends not because you run out of ideas, but because your suit's environmental limit warning chimes. Too much time in this atmosphere. You step back toward the hatch, raising a hand in what you hope is a universal sign for pause, return later. Rocky mirrors the gesture with uncanny precision. As the airlock seals and the Hail Mary's familiar systems wrap you back in human comfort, you lean against the wall and let out a long breath. Your heart is still racing, but not with fear. You came here thinking the mission was yours alone. Now it's yours and Rocky's. Two scientists from two worlds, both staring down extinction, with only each other to keep the dark at bay. And for the first time, the weight on your shoulders feels shared. You learn very quickly that the space between your ships is not a hallway. It's a handshake. Rocky builds a tunnel out of a material your sensors can't identify. Dense as metal, springy as bone, and seals it to the Hail Mary with a gasket that seems to grow from the surface itself. The interface looks like two soap bubbles kissing, an iris in the middle that can open to pass tools and samples and close to become a wall. You work on your side in shirt sleeves. Rocky moves on his side in heat and ammonia, the haze turning his silhouette into a living statue. It is the strangest lab you've ever had, and the most beautiful. Communication stops being a problem and becomes a project. You do what you've always done when language is a barrier. You build a curriculum. Numbers become verbs, tones become nouns, gestures become grammar. Rocky is a quick study. He never forgets a shape or a sound. And when he doesn't understand, he repeats the last correct thing and waits, patient as a metronome, for you to scaffold the next rung. You name objects on your side, and he repeats them in chords. He names objects on his side, and you write phonetic guesses, drawing diacritics you invent on the fly. It feels less like teaching and more like tuning two instruments until harmony stops hurting. Work begins with the vandal in the tube, astrophage, purring in its invisible way, its presence measured not by sight but by what it steals and what it emits. You set up culture chambers on your side, sealed quartz vials, CO2-rich gas mixes, 1.42 micron lamps. Rocky mirrors you with equipment whose shapes make your engineer's heart ache. Everything practical, everything with redundancy, everything obviously handmade by a mind that never met a right angle it trusted. When Rocky clamps one of his instruments to the tunnel wall, your side trembles. You look at him through the iris. He flashes a chord that your translator renders as stable now and taps the mount twice, proud. You grin. He is an engineer down to the bones you can't see. You characterize astrophage the way you would characterize a rude guest, by counting how quickly it empties your pantry. On the wall, a graph grows, faint at first, then bold with data. Photon in, heat out, mass wobbling in ways that would have been a career-ending mistake to assert back on Earth. Here, no one rolls their eyes. Here, the universe itself shrugs and says, yes, energy can hide in places you didn't tell your students about. Don't be precious. You accept the insult and move on. It doesn't divide the way bacteria divide. It accrues, then snaps into two in a way that reminds you of crystal growth more than mitosis. It is greedy and yet meticulous, gorging on light only when the wavelength is right. You vary temperature and watch it sulk. You starve it of CO2 and it paces like a caged animal, waiting for the buffet to open again. You darken the chamber and it goes quiet, storing, counting, conserving. When you bathe it in light, it releases a sigh right on the Petrova wavelength, as if exhaling a secret you've already learned. Rocky contributes a sensor you would have thought ornamental if it were human-made. A cluster of rods braced with filigree, their tips glimmering like frost. He slots it into the tunnel's shared port and hums a short, eager phrase. Your translator finds the nearest words. See very small heat. You run the vials past it and get a picture you've never had before. A thermal map at a resolution you would have traded months of funding to buy back home. The chamber looks like a sky filled with fireflies. Each bright speck is an individual astrophage making a tiny, tidy mess of thermodynamics. Days turn into a rhythm that feels like a heartbeat. You culture, measure, argue, adjust. He builds, tests, reinforces. He shows you that his species makes structure the way yours makes sentences, by repetition until elegance appears. You show him how your species makes inferences, by being wrong precisely until only one possibility is left uninsulted. In the overlaps you find friendship. The first time you see a part of the astrophage life cycle that isn't in your textbooks, because of course it isn't. You almost miss it. You're logging routine emission data when a signal jitters and refuses to settle. You tap the sensor. It's not the sensor. The lamp wavers a hair. It's not the lamp. You look at the vial and see nothing because there is nothing to see. Then Rocky taps the thermal map and hums sharp, urgent notes. The fireflies are moving in formation. He dims the lamp a fraction and the specks swirl into a braided line, then a loop, then a straight shot that points unmistakably toward the LED's source. You whisper, "They're navigating." Of course they are. A thing that makes star-to-planet highways in open space is not going to bumble in a jar like a moth next to a porch bulb. It feels the gradient and goes. You raise the temperature. They stall. You enrich the gas. They surge. You think of Venus and Erid and every Petrova line blinking like a hazard light in the night of a galaxy, and a cold respect slides into your bones. You try a larger chamber, a meter-long tube with a lamp on one end and a cold trap on the other. Astrophage streams toward the lamp until a threshold you don't yet understand is crossed. Then, with eerie unanimity, they reverse and pour into the cold. Rocky watches with a chord you've learned means curious concern. He sketches a rough diagram with his projector, star here, planet here, line between. Then he adds a third point and draws a little crescent around it, humming a phrase your software calls child place. Nest? Nursery? He is saying that the line is not just a highway, it's a migration with a purpose. They don't just eat, they breed. You refine the atmosphere. High CO2, trace nitrogen. Add sulfur dioxide and they behave like you've put spice in the stew. Sluggish, then angry fast. You drop a pinch of metal dust and nothing happens until the dust warms and then the swarm splits around it like a river around a rock. You and Rocky argue in numbers and drawings about catalysts, about how a thing evolved to operate in a Venus-like cuddle might be coaxed to do tricks in a lab coffin. You try to be dispassionate. It's a lie and you're bad at it. The thing in the tube is both your fuel and your famine. Love and loathing feel like twins wearing each other's coats. On the third day of this new phase, you measure time and sleep cycles and how gritty your eyes feel. Rocky sends a series of notes through the iris that your translator renders as I have. See, he rolls in a device he built while you blinked. A tiny carousel of vials, each one passing through controlled bands of light and temperature. The output is a chordal graph, a music you can read. At a specific narrow band of infrared just a hair off the Petrova line, the swarm stalls every time. Not killed, paused, as if a nerve has been pressed. You run it again and again and the stall repeats with the stubbornness of truth. Photo inhibition, you say aloud, and then unable not to, or something like it. You bathe the chamber in a pulse at that band and the swarm flash freezes into a lace of motionless points. When you shift the light back, they sprint as if you've scared them with a slammed door. You and Rocky trade the same chord at the same time, the one that means good. You have, at last, a handle. Now that you can stop them, you can count them. Now that you can count them, you can kill them on purpose and watch how the living respond. When one dies, however, a network of stored energy wrapped in a membrane counts dying, the rest alter course, avoid the debris, then cannibalize it with clinical efficiency. You're not sure whether to be impressed or to write a poem about cruelty. At the edge of your scans, outside your little lab world, the system keeps intruding. Erid sings its heat in the instruments, a constant reminder of a place Rocky calls home with a tenderness he doesn't put in chords. Tau Ceti sits in the cameras like an eye that refuses to blink. Between them, the ship's scopes pick up a faint rhythmic cloud where there shouldn't be one. A scatter of reflective particles coalescing and dispersing in a way that tickles the part of your brain reserved for patterns worth losing sleep over. You aim the big telescope and narrow the field until the cloud fills the screen. It is not dust. It is not ice. It is a bloom pulsing with a tempo that looks alive. You and Rocky stare. You adjust wavelength. The cloud goes black at Petrova and bright outside it, as if something inside is swallowing the exact color of astrophage's breath. Your mouth shapes a word before your mind agrees to own it. Predator. Rocky hums a tight, ascending phrase you have learned to hear as both excitement and worry. Eat eater, the translator offers, which is not elegant but is correct. You replay the footage and watch the edges of the cloud nibble at an invisible stream between star and planet like frost crawling up a window pane. Where it bites, the stream thins. Where it thins, the line beyond dims. For the first time since you woke to a room with two still bodies, you let yourself imagine an ending that isn't a eulogy. You name the planet the cloud orbits because someone has to. Names are how humans pin butterflies and hopes. Adrian, you say into the quiet, and the ship writes it on the map with a small, obedient font. Rocky repeats it in a purling chord. Adrian, a hot, miserable world wearing a crown of death for the thing that is killing your sons. You build the plan in the same breath you build the prayer. You will go there together. You will collect what the cloud is made of and see if it can survive in a bottle and then in a tank and then in the place where it must live. Inside the river of astrophage that holsters your engine and strangles your sky. You will not think about the part where you have to dive into weather that eats metal and opinions for breakfast. That's segment later's problem. You and Rocky have something to chase that isn't a receding future. He taps the tunnel rim and you find that your hand is already there to meet his. Two worlds, one edge. The lab hums. The star burns. Somewhere ahead, a thing that eats the eater waits, indifferent to names and destiny. You gather your tools and your courage as if they're the same object, crash and reboot. When you wake, the star is still steady, the cloud still pulses in the telescope, and the ship's chronometer reminds you that steadiness is just a slow kind of falling. You and Rocky meet at the iris without needing to summon each other. He taps a quick greeting, then projects a cascade of numbers that your brain mercifully still knows how to love. Luminosity drift at his star, at yours, at Tau Ceti. Modeled crop failures. Thermal runaway curves for oceans that have forgotten how to be patient. Two worlds wearing the same countdown in different fonts. You start by making time visible. On your wall, a column labeled Earth dims by degrees, topped by a polite little skull that appears when inevitable becomes a function instead of a fear. Beside it, Irid, his home, does the same. Tau Ceti for now only flutters. Under all three, you add a fourth column called Fuel. The numbers there wear a different kind of threat. Every correction burn costs hours you might later wish were days. Rocky hums a tight, decisive chord. Go, Adrian, now, the translator offers. You nod because agreement has become oxygen, then point to your fuel column and draw a line to a question mark. The ship gives you Delta V budgets when asked, brutally honest about what it can and cannot do. Adrian isn't far by the standards you left behind. By the ones you live with now, it is a promise to spend and your pockets aren't bottomless. You test the handle you found, the narrow band photo inhibition that freezes astrophage mid-greed. In one chamber, they lock up like statues in a flash freeze when you hit the band. In another, the pulse buys you seconds. Then the swarm compensates, routing around the annoyance with a kind of mindless grace. You and Rocky iterate like duelists trading feints. Broader pulses, shorter pulses, interference patterns that look like lace and sound like stuttering rain on a tin roof when Rocky sonifies them for his own instruments. The best you can do is shave their appetite, not starve it. You'll have to be faster and smarter at Adrian than anything alive is comfortable being. You design collection the way mountaineers design a climb. In layers of failure you can survive. Rocky sketches a framework, a cage of his impossible material. You've given up on naming it. Your first attempt came out sounding like a swear, mounted to a spindle that can rotate to keep its mouth pointed into flow. You add baffles and shutters and a curtain of that inhibition light like a curtain of rain. He adds a heat-shedding spine that looks like a finned organ pipe. You argue about joints. He refuses right angles as if they insult his ancestors. You concede because his angles know heat better than you do. The first prototype lives between you, half in your air, half in his. It looks like a lantern built by a spider that worships turbines. You feed it a trickle of lab-grown astrophage and watch the light inside change from complacent to hungry. The shutters stutter in a pattern you wrote. The light snaps them still, the heat pipes sigh. The chamber pressure climbs and then settles. On the thermal map, the dots swarm, stall, and sluice into a capture reservoir lined with a mesh so fine you can't see it. At the end of the run, you have a smear of something that looks like black fog trapped in amber. It is not elegant. It is good. Between prototypes, the ship throws reminders at you in the form of constraints. Your suit can handle only so much heat before the coolant loop sulks and starts lying to you. Your lungs can only argue with adrenaline so long before they mistake effort for injury. Rocky's hull tolerates the kind of temperatures that make your ship's eyebrows sweat. He can go lower, longer. You can finesse instruments he can't touch with his heat. Two curves intersecting. The plan grows in the intersection. Two ship dive, you say to the wall and to Rocky at the same time. You lead in the soup. I ride the edge and do the fine work. Rocky replies with a chord you've learned is agreement salted with contingency. If break, I fix. If you break, I hold, the translator says, and you don't correct its grammar because the meaning lands perfectly square in your chest. You start running atmosphere sims for Adrian. It is a hot world with a tantrum for a sky. The mix is thick enough to make a sound feel slow. The pressure at the altitude you want is enough to make metal remember being ore. You program the Hail Mary's drones to be nervous and obedient. Rocky assembles 4 of his own devices so quickly you decide his species must dream in torque specs. You name your drones after old classmates because helplessness makes you sentimental. Rocky names his after harmonies you can't pronounce and then helpfully nicknames them with simple syllables. Ha, lo, me, na. You realize you've both invented superstition everywhere your plan has to meet weather. The ship pings you while you're cursing a leaky seal. An incoming transmission, not from Earth but from a relay you forgot you launched after waking. A tiny package that has spent weeks belting your logs homeward like messages in bottles thrown upstream. It's an echo. Earth's last update from before you slept caught by the relay's ears and played back to you now like an old voicemail. Crops failing faster in temperate zones, fisheries collapsing in patchwork. A global rationing scheme that reads like a prayer a bureaucrat wrote until the ink broke. You listen twice and then file it behind the part of your mind that knows how to keep moving toward the thing that might change the next message. The next failure is small, which is how big failures introduce themselves. During a high-flux test, a seam in the capture chamber warps by a hair's breadth. You don't see it until a shimmer of gas escapes and your sensors whisper the kind of numbers that make your ship want to ask if you have made peace with your gods. You slap the shutters closed. The lab floods with emergency nitrogen. The hiss stops. Your breath doesn't. You're shaking with the slow aftershocks when Rocky arrives, all motion and intention, sealing the seam with a pace that sets instantly into a glossy black scale. He hums a scolding lullaby at you while he checks the mounts by feel with 2 limbs, and by sound with a 3rd. Small break is large later, the translator says, which is the most generous told you so you've ever received. You nod and adjust the inspection protocol to include that seam. The checklist grows teeth. You let it bite. Late in the cycle that passes for evening aboard the Hail Mary, you try a thought experiment that makes you hate yourself for having it. What if the thing on Adrian eats the eater so well that it eats more than the eater? What if introducing it to the rich, thick-lined highways around Sol and Arid turns rescues into famines of a different kind? You sketch containment trees, quarantine layers, kill switch lights at frequencies that turn hunger to stillness. You write no cross-system transfer before multi-month validation in capital letters and underline it until the pen tears the paper. Rocky taps the iris and hums a question. You show him the diagram. He studies it and sings the chord for wisdom that you heard once when you refused to skip a sterilization step your rushed heart wanted to skip. It feels like absolution. It isn't. It's a promise to be careful at the speed of panic. You spend an hour building a toy universe in code. Tau Ceti, Adrian, Sol, Arid, each with a slider for how much eater and another for how much eater. You drag the sliders and watch civilizations live or die as curves chew through each other. In one run, Earth glows bright and then dims slower. In another, Arid survives and Earth falters. In a third, both hold, fragile and twitching. You save the runs where both hold. You pin them to the wall like butterflies you intend to set free later. The last rehearsal before you commit feels wrong in the way perfect things do. Every valve answers. Every sensor sings. The capture lantern purrs. The drones sit on their rails like horses at a gate. Rocky's ship flexes its heat ribs as if stretching before a dance. You force yourself to find a flaw and end up changing the order of 2 steps no one but you cares about. It helps. The illusion of control is not control, but it is courage shaped like procedure. Burn day arrives without trumpets. The Hail Mary rotates, the engine wakes, and for a few minutes the universe is a vector and you are its punctuation. Rocky slides into formation ahead and a little below you. His hull throwing off heat like a stave throws off notes. In the cameras, Adrian swells from coin to world. Not a pretty one. All ochres and burn scars and a cap of brightness where clouds boil. Final comm check, you say, because saying it is a thing between terror and tradition. The ship prints back your words in text because hearing your own voice echoed would make you feel haunted. Rocky answers with a 4-note chord you can now hum in your sleep. I hear. The plan fits into your mouth one last time. You say it mostly for yourself. Skim at collection altitude. Open the lantern into the thick of the Petrova River just where the cloud grazes it. Pulse the inhibition light on the mouth of the lantern to keep the eaters from sprinting through. Shudder in bursts. Separate what you've caught into sealed vials with independent kill lights. Then get back out before the atmosphere decides to end the argument with a lightning bolt the size of a city. You glance once at the 4 columns on your wall. Earth, Arid, Tau Ceti, fuel, like a sailor glancing at old photos before a storm. Then you strap in and tell your nerves to pretend they are joy. Rocky edges forward, a black silhouette against a bright, ugly sky. The capture lantern sits in its cradle like a heart you built with persistence and fear. Let's bring home a monster that eats monsters, you whisper and push the sequence that opens the mouth. Adrian's sky hits you like a door opening into a furnace. The moment you bite into atmosphere, the ship becomes a fist around your ribs. Buffeting slams along the hull in fists and palms. The telemetry stutters in waves. Numbers that were polite in vacuum start using their outdoor voices. Your eyes lock to the readouts not because you don't trust the ship, but because trust wants witnesses when things get loud. Rocky knifes ahead, a black, many-ribbed silhouette cutting a clean wake through air that looks thick enough to chew. His hull radiates heat the way a choir radiates sound. Structured, governed, always within margins he calculated and then tattooed into his bones. He sends a 4-note check and you answer with the single tone that means, with you. The capture lantern extends on its articulated mast like a flower made of intention. Shutters cinched, inhibition lights cold and ready. The cloud is where and what you hoped it would be. A bruise in the sky that doesn't blow with the weather. A smear of suspended particulate that moves to a rhythm you didn't program. Even through the camera's struggle against glare, you see its skin shiver where the Petrova River brushes it. A tide line that isn't water and a shoreline that isn't rock. At the precise altitude you've modeled to exhaustion, the river is thick, richer than anywhere you've tested. It gleams only by absence, a black ribbon at 1.42 microns, and everything in you that still loves beauty wants a second to admire it. You don't give yourself the second. You give the lantern its mouth. Opening, you say, and the mast locks with a click you feel through your seat. Shutters iris apart. The inhibition band flares, not bright to human eyes, but the sensors spike, and you ease the ship so the lantern's throat points into the river at a shallow angle. Everything inside you leans with it, a human body becoming a vector. Contact feels like tapping a live wire with a spoon. The lantern's intake pressure ticks up, the heat pipes sing, the reservoir count begins to climb in a smooth, tight curve. On the thermal map, the Petrova fireflies stream to the mouth, meet the curtain of the wrong color, stall and eddy. A fraction of a second later, the shutters lunge, gulp, close. You don't know whether to call it feeding or fishing. You call it success, and the ship prints the word for you because your mouth is too busy being your lungs. Cycle 2, you say. The second shutter gulp is less smooth. The turbulence claws at you sideways, a cross-current in the river you didn't budget for. You damp it. The numbers behave again. Rocky paces just ahead and a hair below, his heat signature ribs flexing in micro-adjustments that read as concentration. He's steering the wake to keep the lantern's throat in the sweetest part of the stream. It is like dancing with someone whose pulse you can hear. The first problem arrives on little cat feet and then grows fangs. A temperature delta ripples through your left side radiator, lazy at first, then insistent. You track it to a boundary layer lift, a sudden rearrangement of air that drapes hot breath over metal that wanted cold. Left rack rising, you say. The ship suggests 3 corrective vectors in the patient tone of a parent who knows you're going to pick the risky one. You pick the third because it keeps the lantern aligned. The radiator stops sulking. You promise it a maintenance check it will never appreciate. Cycle 3, you call, and the shutters lunge. This time the intake spike overshoots, a gust in the river or a pulse from the cloud, and the lantern shudders against its mast. You feel it like a tooth hurt. Before you can swear, Rocky's cord cuts through the noise. Hold. He rolls a degree, his wake catching the lantern's mouth and cradling it back to center. Your own hands have already moved, throttling the inhibition band up a hair, slowing the flow. The capture reservoir count keeps climbing, unbothered by your cortisol. For a few blessed cycles, the plan is a plan. Open pulse, gulp, close. Reservoir 1 fills to its mark. You route to Reservoir 2. The kill light purrs to keep your prize sleepy. A small part of your brain opens the toy universe model and slides the eater bar up 1 notch. Earth's curve softens. Arid's brightens. You don't let the part smile. Smiles compute as hubris down here. Lightning finds you on cycle 7. It doesn't hit you directly. It hits somewhere close enough that the world goes white behind your eyelids while your eyes are open. The shockwave slaps the hull. The lantern's mast sings like a struck sword. Alarms decide they will all speak at once. For 2 heartbeats, you are flying a bell in the middle of a storm that thinks you're an opinion. The inhibition band drops a fraction with the power shutter. The Astro's stream surge. Shutter timing slips. A sliver of river punches into the throat and tries to ram the kill light like a crowd at a turnstile. "Cut!" you bark, already stabbing the emergency close. The shutters slam. Too fast, harder than they like. And the lantern complains with a squeal that will be a repair. Pressure spikes in the neck. A seam you over-torqued during rehearsal whispers its discontent. A draft of CO2 hisses where no draft should be. Rocky is already on it. He drops back like a stone with a plan, clamps 2 limbs to the mast and sings a chord that your translator renders stay. You freeze the lantern into diagnostic mode and he welds, if it's welding, in 3 short, luminous bursts that dapple the mast joint with glossy black scales. The hiss stops. The pressure curve unhunches. Your pulse continues to be a liar. Cycle 8, you hear yourself say, because the alternative is sitting very still and discovering what shaking feels like. Rocky answers with the 4-note "with you" again. Stronger this time, as if volume could defeat weather. You cheat your way back into the river on the next pass, shallower, letting the inhibition curtain work harder so you can work gentler. It costs you time, which costs you fuel, which costs you futures you haven't lived yet. You buy it anyway. The reservoir count ticks toward the line you drew when you were feeling conservative and brave in equal measure. When it kisses the line, your hand does not hesitate. "Switch to 3, you say. The machine obeys. You obey the machine. The cloud, indifferent to heroics, keeps feeding at the river's edge. You can't see the eater, only the effect it has on the stream. But you talk to it in your head like a skittish animal. Just a little more. Come a little closer, let me see your teeth. You wonder if it evolved here or arrived like a courier. You wonder if it knows it's about to audition for a new ecosystem with judges who have no cards left to hold up but yes and please. On cycle 10, the lantern coughs. It's a mechanical thing. A particulate load in the intake that the shutters don't like. A beat of stiction in a bearing that has suddenly remembered friction exists. The gulp stutters and the reservoir count stops. If you force it, you'll jam it. If you baby it, you'll lose the stream you like. You make the unheroic call. Retract. Maintenance pattern, Charlie. The mast folds the lantern in like a hawk, drawing in a talon. Systems drop into a feverish, efficient frenzy. Purge lines check. Shutters open and close in a quick, therapeutic flutter. The kill light hums a lullaby you intended for another context entirely. You expect guilt. You get relief. Courage is not driving through the red light. It's knowing which red lights will still be there in 60 seconds. Rocky arcs outward and back, carving a loop that puts his ship between you and the brightest swath of cloud. He sends a question that translates as "small fix." You answer small because you need the universe to hear you say it. The bearing cools. The stiction loosens. The stutter becomes a whisper. You test the shutters once more and the lantern clears its throat without complaint. "Hey, back in," you say. The ship slides obediently, the mast extends, and the river welcomes you like a grudge. You get 2 more clean cycles. The reservoir count for vial 4 crawls over its target. The system chirps a modest, entirely inappropriate chime that sounds like a toaster saying breakfast is ready. You almost laugh and then decide to save the laugh for a day with oxygen you didn't budget so tightly. "A package sealed," you report. Rocky answers with a chord that is mostly triumph and a sliver of "out now." You agree. The plan has another page, the one where greed kills professionals. You close the lantern for the last time, lock the vials with their independent quench bands, and command the ship to climb. Adrian does not want you to go. It drags at the hull with hands made of heat and pressure, claws of turbulence, the occasional thrown boulder of electricity to make a point. Your trajectory is a long exhale timed to the beat of the engines. The sky that was ochre and bruised thins to something like molten pearl, then to brass, then to a blue so dark it's nearly a joke. The instruments stop screaming and go back to the calm rattle of people who've agreed to worry later. When vacuum arrives, it arrives all at once. A curtain pulled, a noise removed. Your shoulders drop so hard it feels like gravity changed its mind. The Hail Mary's radiators spread like black wings, dumping betrayal heat back into a universe that forgives everything because it notices nothing. Rocky's ship flexes, shedding the last of Adrian's touch. You inventory what you've stolen. 4 vials, each holding a smear of knot dust that hides from one color and bites another. You watch them like a parent at a crib, listening to machines that promise they will keep singing the kill song at a frequency that turns hunger into statues. You will not believe them. You will check again in 5 minutes and 10 and 20 until the habit is a religion. On the wall, your columns wait. Earth, arid, Tau Ceti, fuel. You add a 5th. Adrian, payload. It fills with 4 neat tick marks that look small enough to lose between couch cushions. You stand very still and let yourself feel the weight those marks carry. Not to crush you, but to anchor you for the next step. Rocky taps the iris. You meet him there. He touches the tunnel rim and sings a 4-note phrase you've only heard once when the prototype finally stopped exploding. Your translator takes its time and then offers almost shyly, "Good work, friend." Your throat tightens in an environment that has no humidity to spare. You tap back, simple and exact. "Good work." Then, because you have learned the grammar of honesty in an alien tongue, you add the chord that means scared. "But continue," he answers with the one that means me too, but yes. Beyond the hull, the cloud keeps eating the river. Inside the hull, you hold the thing that eats the eater. Between those facts lies the rest of the mission and whatever it will ask of your body and your courage next. You spend the first hour after Adrian pretending your hands aren't shaking. It's easy until you try to button a panel and the button wins. You laugh once the way a diver laughs through a regulator. A short bark that fogs the inside of your head more than it clears it. And force yourself through the checklist again because ritual is what people build when gods don't return calls. The payload sits under kill-light lullabies that never pause. 4 vials. 4 chances. You and Rocky prepare the next step the way surgeons prepare an operating theater with an earthquake for a ceiling. The plan is simple and cruelly precise. Verify the eater lives outside Adrian's tantrum sky. Watch it eat astrophage in captivity. Then see if it can survive the different songs of different stars. If it can sing along to Tau Ceti and Soul, you have a cure. If not, you have a very interesting obituary. Your ship is best for analysis. Rocky's is best for heat and violence. The tunnel between your worlds becomes a pipeline of tools and hope. You keep one eye on the vials and the other on the numbers running down the wall. Earth, arid, fuel. The skulls at the tops of the first 2 columns haven't changed. That is not comfort, it's a timer. You're bent over the micro chambers when the first betrayal arrives. It's not dramatic. It doesn't deserve a theme song. A cartridge on your CO2 scrubber throws an error, a blinking amber that looks bored with your survival. You check it, reseat it, check again. The amber persists. You mutter a creative insult and swap the cartridge entirely. The amber goes away as meekly as it arrived. You mark it on the maintenance board and go back to work. An hour later, the amber returns, but you don't see it because you're watching the knot dust in the microchamber do something you've never seen the universe do. Change its mind in real time. Under a sliver of astrophage light, the eater pulses, then splits, then reorganizes into a lattice that drinks Petrova and sweats it back out as heat you can measure. It is the first time you have ever seen hope metabolize. You stare until your eyes ache. Still good, you say aloud to Rocky, to the ship, to the part of you that tenses at good news. Because the world taught you to anticipate the other shoe. Your head feels heavy. You chalk it up to exhaustion and take one step too quickly when Rocky hums the chord that means come see this from his side. This from the irises. Heat rolls through like a dog sticking its head into a cold kitchen. Rocky's world is the color of old iron and the tight, spicy smell of ammonia and hot stone. He has built a harness for you because of course he has. A bracketed frame that clips to your suit, lined with his impossible material, studded with handholds at human widths even though he has never held a human hand. You click in, run a glove along one of the mounts and tell him soft, show off. He purls a note that your translator renders as engineer pride and then adds, hurry because the thing he wants you to see is living on a table made of fins and patience. A tiny flow loop that takes in astrophage and returns heat, a microcosm of a miracle. He wants you to look at a pressure pulse that shouldn't be there, a hiccup in the loop that might be a boundary your future cannot afford. It takes half a second for the amber light on your wrist to go from ignorable to insistent. CO2 partial pressure climbs like a slow, rude tide. That's not how your suit is supposed to behave. You crack the valve, purge, taste clean air, return to the numbers. The numbers return to misbehaving. Your tongue feels thick. The world feels a degree farther away than it was a breath ago. Scrubber, you say, and your own voice sounds like it's coming through a hallway. The system listens. It acknowledges. It lies. You turn to go, to break the seal and fall back into human air, and your boot finds the one place in the universe where your tether can catch. It catches like a hand on an ankle in a dream. You stumble. The harness keeps you from hitting a surface you don't want to learn with your face. The jolt jars the suit's waist ring. Somewhere very small, a gasket that's been waiting for its moment decides this is it. You don't see the leak, you feel it. A subtle cold on your hip that is not temperature but pressure leaving home. The amber on your wrist climbs to red. Your head fills with cotton and bells. Your breath turns into something you can hear but not own. You think panic is a choice. You try. Not now. The body does what bodies do when they smell old caves and dark water. It chooses for you. The corridor tilts. The world narrows to the circle of your visor. In it Rocky blazes, all heat and intention, limbs a blur the way a hummingbird is a blur if your camera is wrong. He is at your waist in a heartbeat, sealing the ring with a two-fingered tool he made because he makes tools the way other people make excuses. He sings at you, a low, insistent chord that lives in your bones. You feel the vibration before you understand the meaning. Breathe small. You try to obey the way you would obey a tide. Small in, small out. The bells in your head complain and then begin to forget you. You see the numbers on the inside of your eyes drop in awkward, blessed steps. CO2 falls from murderous to arrogant. O2 climbs from stingy to fair. Your hands, clever once, hang like tools you haven't learned. Rocky doesn't leave. He plants 3 limbs around you and a 4th on the tunnel wall, anchoring both your worlds together like a bridge deciding to be a hand. He repeats the chord. Breathe small. He adds another, 2 notes, one above the other. That you've only heard after drills when your pulse learned how to walk again. You are safe. It takes a long time for your trust to arrive. When it does, it arrives all at once. You stop fighting the urge to gulp and sip instead. The tunnel cools by a degree you don't notice with skin but do with gratitude. Your vision widens from a porthole to a window. The red on your wrist sighs back to amber and then grudgingly to green. He keeps holding you until your hands remember how to be attached to wrists. When you can nod without lying, he loosens the ring he reinforced, checks the seal the way a pianist checks a key and hums. Okay now, with a flourish that would be comedy if your throat weren't sore with the aftertaste of fear. Back in human air, you sit on the floor because chairs are for people who don't know what floors are for. You peel the helmet and inhale a ship that smells like filters in your own tiredness. The medical scanner tells you what you already know in the voice of a schoolteacher. Mild hypercapnia, transient hypoxia, adrenaline like a marching band. You drink water like you're trying to bribe your blood. Your hands stop auditioning for percussion section. Rocky waits at the iris, silent, still. When you look up, he gives you the chord that means I stay. You nod. I know. Your voice is hoarse and human. Thanks. The translator tries to be grand and lands on perfect. Friend, do. Something inside you that has been knotted since the day a woman in a black suit stood on your doormat unknots by one loop. You didn't come here to make promises. You came here to fix a sky. But promises seem to grow anywhere there's breath and attention. You clip a new cartridge into the scrubber with the care of a jeweler. Then you walk back to the iris and tap the rim with 2 fingers, the way you've seen Rocky do before work begins. Ye deal, you say, and let the ship render the rest because it has learned your grammar. I watch you. You watch me. If break, we fix. If I break and you cannot fix, you go. If you break and I cannot fix, I go. We carry answer home. The translator spits it out in chunks that feel like stone tablets. You both accept them that way. He holds the rim with you for a full breath. Yes, he sings. Then softer, a chord that has no earth word you like. The machine tries 4 before it settles on the smallest. Promise. You test the betrayal's aftermath the way you test everything now. With data and superstition. You pull the bad cartridge apart. A hairline crack in the casing, a seal that would have held for 1,000 more hours if you'd never needed it to hold in this one. You replace every matching part on board. You add a line to the pre-entry check. You tape a note above the tunnel you don't need to read to remember. Small breaths. Then you return to the work that made you forget your body in the first place. The eater in the microchambers blooms under your kill lights when you feed it astrophage and sulks when you starve it. You begin the long, cruel series. Sol-like light, Tau Ceti-like light, Arid-like light, each a different song for a hungry throat. It survives 2 without complaint, falters on the 3rd, recovers when you adjust temperature by a whisper. You add a column to the wall labeled singing. A 3-row table with check marks that march toward the right kind of chorus. At lights out, a term that is a joke this far from home. You lie on your back under a ceiling that is mostly wires and cooling loops and listen to the ship breathe. Your chest remembers the command to breathe small and does it on its own. A new habit born the way old ones always are. Out of fear, then out of practice, then because it's how you walk through days you're lucky to have. You wonder if your body will betray you again. It will. That's what bodies do. You wonder if Rocky's will hold when his ship demands more heat than comfort. It might not. That's what missions do. Between those truths is the promise you nailed to the tunnel, that you will carry the answer even if you have to crawl. You close your eyes. In the dark, you see a river that isn't water, a cloud that eats a hunger, a friend who held you still and taught you a new way to breathe. Tomorrow you will test whether salvation can hum along to 2 suns. Tonight you memorize the chord for I stay and let it vibrate your bones until sleep pries the tools out of your hands. At first, the data behaves like a miracle that read your notes. In 3 microchambers under 3 different songs of starlight, the eater doesn't blink. Tau Ceti's spectrum, Sol's spectrum, Arid spectrum, you change the color of the sky and it keeps doing the same holy, ordinary thing. It eats astrophage and turns breath into heat. You ramp temperature, it adjusts. You starve it for a minute. It sulks and survives. You sing to it with the inhibition band and it pauses like a polite guest, then resumes with the patience of a river. You scale up because hope always asks for a larger container. The bench loop becomes a suitcase loop. The suitcase loop becomes a refrigerator loop. The numbers keep smiling. You start sketching deployment trees on the wall, seed colonies near Venus to gnaw Sol's Petrova line, seed colonies near Arid Star to carve a corridor home for Rocky's people. Containment protocols stack like bricks around each arrow. You write "kill light" here in 3 places and feel like someone responsible. The first wrong number is small enough to ignore. Power draw from the starboard fuel manifold rises a fraction. You flag it, intending to come back. You don't. You're busy watching the Eater sing along to a light blend you built to mimic late afternoon Earth. The manifold asks again. A soft cough in a loud room. A bead of condensation forms outside a line that never condenses. The ship pings you in the tone it uses for reminders you pretend are optional. You glance. You frown. You open the panel. Inside, a smell like hot penny and old lightning. A faint, impossible frost where only warmth should live. On a fiber the size of a hair, something black spiders out in a pattern that is neither corrosion nor debris nor any failure you rehearsed. It is growth, thin and delicate and undeniable. At exactly the wavelength that astrophage breathes. You say a word the translator doesn't know and then another it does. Stop. Kill lights slam on in 3 places that used to be theoretical. Valves clap shut with the politeness of guillotines. The manifold isolates. The numbers dip, recover, keep sulking. You know the story before you say it out loud. The Eater got out. Not much. A whisper. A seed on a cuff. A film on a tool. A hair's breadth smear on a glove at the iris when you were clumsy with gratitude after not dying. It found a hose where astrophage flows like a river. And because the universe rewards audacity, it did the most natural, catastrophic thing in the world. It ate. You freeze the line with the inhibition band, pulse after pulse until the thermal map shows nothing moving. Then you purge, burn, bake, and pray in a sequence you would have mocked in a younger lab. Sections of tubing go soft and then brittle under punishment you designed for a different problem. You cut them out and throw them into a quarantine box that shines the wrong color until every molecule inside gives up on appetite. Across the tunnel, Rocky hums a chord you've never heard from him. Not panic, not grief, but a sharp, narrow frequency that translates as danger spread. You flash the map. You show him the frozen artery, the sealed junctions that held. You don't show him the part of your head that's already projecting what would have happened if the seed had found main tanks instead of a manifold. The projector would have drawn your ship as a lantern going dark, slowly and then all at once. You spend the next cycle pretending to be machines. Check, pulse, purge, replace, temp hold, check again. You turn your fuel system into a museum of redundancies. Rocky mirrors you on his side, his cords clipped and professional. He adds 2 shutters where your design had 1, then adds a 3rd because this is how his people keep breath in cities that live under ovens. You add another kill light because superstition is just experience wearing beads. When you finally exhale, the wall tells you what you already feel in your bones. You've lost a slice of fuel you didn't plan to lose. Return feasibility. The ship prints in a font that refuses to be dramatic. Reduced. You don't ask it for a number. Numbers will be honest, and you are not brave enough for that particular honesty yet. You're tightening the last clamp when Rocky pings you with a question. Your fuel safe? You answer safe now and send him your map. He sends his back and the breath leaves your chest in a shape you recognize as someone else's fear. On his manifold, the frost is thicker. The lace is denser. The Eater likes his lines more than yours. It found more river in his pipes. and where your punishment can come as cold and light and a clean sweep with air you can breathe. His ship lives in heat and ammonia. Your toys don't work as well in his weather. His tools do, and he is already using them with a speed that makes your hands jealous. But speed and tools might not be enough. His cord lands like metal ringing after a strike. I can fix not all. The plan in your head that was a tree turns into a fork in a single breath. Fork 1. Burn for home. You have enough if nothing else goes wrong. Nothing else never happens. But if the eater colonies you seed near Venus do their job, Earth gets to argue about art again someday. There is a version of the future where you land to cameras and guilt and children holding banners with paint on their hands. And you tell them about a friend they will never meet in a sky they cannot breathe. Fork 2. Turn with Rocky. Burn for Arid now. Spend what you need to spend to pull alongside him and keep him alive until his ship stops trying to digest itself. Deliver the recipe for salvation not as a message in a bottle, but as a hand to a door. Then, maybe there's a trajectory from there that threads a needle back towards Sul. Maybe there isn't. You will be a teacher on a world of stone and heat. You will be alive. Earth will get your notes and your math, not your face. The ship is quiet except for the hum that means courage and electricity in equal parts. The wall doesn't care which column you stare at. Earth, arid, fuel, the skulls don't blink. Beside you, 4 vials of a thing that eats hunger glow with a faint thermal haze. In the iris's glass, your face looks like someone who fell asleep in a classroom and woke up in a myth. You ask the ship to build you a lie, a trajectory that gives both futures to both worlds without asking for a price you can't pay. It draws 2 curves that almost kiss and then don't. It prints. Joint success probability, low. You change parameters. It changes tone, low. You ask it if there is a path where you save one and still get to choose later. It prints a simpler word, pick. You think of a black-ribbed silhouette dropping like a stone and singing to your bones breathe small. You think of a chord at the tunnel rim that meant promise. You think of Earth, your students with chalk on their sleeves, a classroom with sun on the floor. The taste of tap water, the hiss of buses, the way human laughter leaks around door frames. You also think about what the eater is for. Not for coming home, for stopping rivers that are drowning suns. Rocky's people are as real as the kids who wrote your name with crooked letters. They breathe music and live in ovens and build right angles only by accident. One of them held you still while your animal mind tried to bolt. One of them learned your grammar and nailed it to a wall. When the answer arrives, it doesn't feel like bravery. It feels like grammar, like the only verb that makes the sentence be true. You turn to the communications rack and open a beetle cradle. A little coffin of a probe with a big antenna and a loyal heart. You load it with everything a planet needs to know. The eater's behaviors, the inhibition frequencies that make it freeze and sing, the deployment trees for seeding near Venus, the cautions in capital letters about quarantines and cross-contamination and kill lights that must never go dark. You add a video in which you say, as if to a classroom, "I'm not coming back now. Please save room in your sky for hope." You arm the beetle. You hold it a second longer than procedure allows. You let go. It scuttles out into quiet and then sprints sunward like a good dog. Then you walk to the helm with legs that feel borrowed. You draw a circle around a different star than the one that raised you. You request a burn that spends enough to make your ancestors whisper about folly and your friends sing the chord for stay alive. The ship asks you to confirm because machines are polite where fate is not. You confirm. Acceleration climbs. The engine's song turns your bones into tuning forks. In the forward cameras, Rocky's ship rolls to match, his heat ribs flaring, his silhouette aligning with your vector like 2 sentences sharing a verb. He sings you a 4-note phrase you didn't know you needed. Thank you, Liv. The translator hesitates and then, as if shy, offers a second reading. Thank you, still alive. You answer with the simplest chord you have. Yes. Then because grammar matters, you add one more that you didn't have before Adrian, before the manifold frost, before the choice cut you to shape. Home is two. Behind you, a beetle drags a thread of human math toward the pale warmth of a dimming sun. Ahead of you, a friend drags the gravity well of his whole species. Between the two, you and a dwindling tank of stolen starlight split yourself along the only line that makes sense. When the burn ends, the ship writes a new word over the map in a small, obedient font. Irid. Intercept planned. Return feasibility. Very low. You look at the skulls on the wall, then at the space where you will tape a new promise above the iris. You raise a hand to the tunnel rim. Rocky meets it. The two ships hum together, a single instrument learning a harder song. The weeks to Arid are a slow tightening of the world. Outside, Tau Ceti's light grows from a pin to a coin, pale gold and unwavering. Inside, the Hail Mary becomes a loop. Maintenance, testing, translation drills, sleep, repeat. The wall's columns no longer track Earth. You've stopped refreshing the data. The skull in that column is fixed in place now, like a gravestone you can't read from here. Beside it, Irid pulses with a countdown you intend to see reach 0. Every morning, if you can call it morning in a place where day is just another number. You meet Rocky at the iris. He hums check, you answer check, and the ritual feels less like procedure and more like a greeting you've earned. Together you inspect the Eater vials, tapping in sync against the glass to test the kill light's patience. The organisms are still docile in their cages, still hungry for astrophage when you feed them test pulses. They've learned your schedule in the way microbes learn anything, through chemical inevitability. Fuel dwindles slower now. Rocky has rewritten half your efficiency protocols in chords you barely understand. And the gains are real enough that you've stopped asking how. You repay him in the lab, tuning inhibition frequencies so precise they're like keys on a piano that only you can play. Your combined work has turned each vial from a fragile treasure into a weapon measured in watts and seconds. You begin building the delivery systems for Arid, autonomous pods with heat shields tuned to his world's brutal atmosphere, each loaded with Eater colonies in stasis. Rocky's engineering is all curves and tension struts, resistant to heat and vibration. Yours is all compartmentalization and redundant fail-safes. You argue over the number of pods. He wants quantity. You want control. You settle somewhere between. The compromise marked with a double chord your translator renders as good argue. When the burn alarms sound for final approach, the ship's hum changes. Lower, throatier, more alive. Arid swells in the forward display. A rust-colored marble swaddled in a haze that glows like banked embers. Thermal overlays bloom with impossible temperatures. You think of stepping outside into that and feel your lungs tighten in sympathy. Rocky transmits a full sky map from his ship. His homeworld's Petrova line pulses like a vein too close to the skin. You can see where it feeds into the star, a black stream at 1.42 microns that robs light without remorse. The Eater pods will need to be released close enough to intercept the line before it reaches the star's surface. Close enough that even Rocky's heat-proof hull will feel the bite. The insertion burn slams you into your couch. The harness bites your shoulders. When the engines go silent again, the quiet feels louder than the noise. 2 days out, you run the final tests. One pod fails, a containment seal that didn't like the last vibration cycle. You replace it, but the loss takes a bite out of your margin. Rocky notices the way you stare at the damaged seal before you eject it into space. He hums a single low note. Your translator offers, "Enough is enough." The night before deployment, you can't sleep. You lie under the cooling loops and think about what enough means when you're gambling with a star. You think about Earth's oceans, about the way sunlight used to scatter in water, about chalkboards and kids leaning forward in their seats. You think about Rocky's planet, its furnaces and music, its people who will never know your face but might hum the same chords you've learned to love. The day comes without ceremony. Rocky takes point, his ship leading you into a trajectory that grazes the Petrova line. Even here, in the relative safety of vacuum, your sensors pick up the dense hum of energy moving between star and planet. The Eater pods are locked, kill lights active, timers armed. Ready, you say, more to yourself than the ship. Rocky answers with the phrase that started this partnership. With you. One by one, the pods eject from both ships, unfolding heat shields like petals. They fall toward the line in calculated arcs, tiny seeds aimed at the roots of a cosmic weed. You watch their telemetry, altitude, temperature, structural integrity, until the feeds drop off one by one, either because they've entered the star's blinding glare or because they've reached the point where your instruments can't follow. Then there's nothing to do but wait. The change, when it comes, is almost too small to notice. The line's density drops a fraction, a tiny flicker in its steady pulse. You hold your breath. Another fraction. The flow slows. Rocky sends a chord so bright your translator struggles to catch it. Working. The two of you watch in silence as the black vein thins further, as if the star itself is breathing easier. It's too early to declare victory. Stars don't change in minutes. But you can see the beginning of something you've been chasing since you woke in that cold, white room surrounded by silence. "A home is two," you murmur, touching the wall between you. Rocky answers without hesitation, his chord warm and certain. Home is two. Behind you, somewhere so far away, it's more concept than place. A tiny beetle ship races toward a pale blue world. Ahead, under a different sun, your friend's planet may have just stepped back from the edge. And here, between them, you are exactly where you need to be. And so, the journey that began in a sterile white room with no memory and no name finds its meaning here, in the space between two suns. One, a dimming light that raised you, the other a furnace that shaped your friend. You came alone, and so did he. You carried different skies in your lungs, different gravities in your bones, but the same fear in your hearts. That fear became work. That work became trust. And that trust became the bridge neither of you knew you were building. The universe will remember this moment, not because it was loud, but because it was shared. Two lives from two worlds standing together where hope was all that kept the dark away. Somewhere far from here, Earth will one day learn that you chose not to return, because saving your home meant saving his too. And somewhere closer, under the heat and haze of arid, Rocky's people will breathe a little longer, hum a little brighter, because a human from a pale blue world kept a promise. Maybe no one will tell the story the same way twice. Maybe the stars won't care, but you'll know, and Rocky will know, and that's enough. Thank you for traveling with us through this story. If you found meaning here, if you felt the wonder, the weight, and the warmth of this journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Novel Whisper Official, and comment below the title of the next novel you'd like us to bring to life. Until next time, may your skies be clear, your engines steady, and your home always be more than one place. 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 More than one place.